Good to go.
Okay. Well, as person that's been on this longest, Dan, do you want to chair up for this meeting?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
Let's see if I can do this here. I guess, call to order. I believe that's over here, right?
Yeah,
Good.
okay, and then for first part of the meeting, you just have call for public comment, in case there's any online or in person.
All right, do we have any roll call?
Yeah.
Roll call, okay. Well, let's see, is John Kress? No.
Present.
Yep.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Melody Williams,
Present.
and I am Dan Tessman, and Nancy Riggle.
Present.
All right, and then,
There is
Mike.
a quorum.
okay. Do I need to go through Mike and Robert and the rest?
No.
Okay. And then, any public comment?
We did not receive any public comments. There is one person in the attendees list, though. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. What, any discussion there? Seeing none, do we have any, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda 2.01, 2.02, and 2.03?
So moved, Melody Williams.
Second, John Kress.
All right. Moved and seconded. All in favor, either raise their hand or say aye. Or show their
Aye.
hand.
Oh, we need to hear their votes. Nancy, you're muted.
Approved?
Aye, sorry.
Okay. Unanimous?
Did you vote?
Oh, yes, aye, sorry. Unanimous, all right. That moves unanimously. Moving on, we'll, city engineer report with Alex Mazzari.
Yeah, you bet. I have a little presentation that we put together of a few items to update you on. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So for the agenda, we have 6 items here to discuss with you. Listed here, the wastewater treatment plant, the sewage lift station number 5 project, the 2023 CIPP, that's an acronym for cured in place piping. It's a sewer rehabilitation project we'll be working on. Reservoir number 4, and then a couple of traffic transportation projects, Southwest Academy Way and Whitman Drive and Southwest Garrison Village Way. Those last 2, we had some staff members in our office work on. I'm not a transportation engineer, so I'll do my best to cover them. Maybe Robert can help fill in a little bit on those as well. Next slide, please. So for the wastewater treatment plant, we've been talking about this off and on for the past couple of years now. We did finally receive a draft funding agreement from the Department of Ecology. It is in total a $26 million funding package from Ecology, $10 million grant and $16 million loan, which is a fantastic funding offer from the Department of Ecology. It is split basically into 2 halves, one being the collection system upgrades and the other being the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And under the collection system upgrades, there's that CIPP, that again, that's an acronym for cured in place piping. So if you remember, last year we prepared a general sewer plan where we did an asset management inventory of the sewage collection system and identified 10 years worth of projects for rehabilitation of the sewer, of the collection system. And so this would address that, the cured in place piping rehab. Lift station number 5 is another one of the collection system upgrade projects, and that's one that we're currently designing right now. And with the collection system upgrades, the basic schedule in the funding agreement is that we need to have the design completed within a year. And then the construction complete by middle of 2025, and that's a very doable schedule. The wastewater treatment plant upgrades, we have a longer schedule associated with that. We need to have construction complete by mid-2027 on that. And if you remember, the phase one upgrades for the wastewater treatment plant involved a lot of other projects, including a large storage lagoon, irrigation pump station, and things like that. Those parts of the project we're going to put on hold while we're continuing to work out an agreement with the city of Walla Walla. The initial projects we'll be working on, getting out to bid here really soon, are projects that you will need to do regardless. So replacing the influent screens, doing some air piping upgrades and equalization basin improvements, and then upgrading a lot of the electricals and PLCs throughout the wastewater treatment plant. As part of the funding agreement, what it has in there is a milestone for this, working with the city of Walla Walla, that they want to see a memorandum of decision to either move forward with sending effluent to the city of Walla Walla or not by the end of 2025. So that's our timeline, where if we cannot get an agreement in place with Walla Walla, we have the off-ramp to then build the rest of the phase one project as it's currently approved. And so that timeline is in that funding agreement. It's worth noting. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of the funding agreement. The things to draw attention to are basically, they're splitting the funding to be half grant and half loan when we apply for reimbursement from the state. And so each of the rows here are the tasks associated with the funding agreement. So the first one, the grant loan administration, that's for city staff's time, your finance director. Next one being the collection system rehabilitation design. So that CIPP project, that'll be for the design of that project. The third row, the construction of that project. The fourth row, the construction management portion of that project. The fifth row is the construction of the lift station number 5 project. So we're currently working on the design of that. That is funded by a Public Works Trust Fund loan. The sixth row would be the construction management of the lift station 5 project. And then the last 2 rows related to the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. We'll spend only a portion of that this year for the kind of the skinny down version of the phase 1 project. And then the remainder will be used down the road once we get through that agreement process with the city of Walla Walla. So that's just a summary of that funding agreement that has come out. Next slide, please. So on the wastewater treatment plant, here's a summary of some of the action items that we're working on now. So now that we have the funding agreement in place and a schedule in mind, we're working on developing the bidding documents for that phase 1 project. Basically, all it involves is eliminating a lot of the project that we had part of it before, such as the pond, the pump stations, the irrigation improvements, and things like that. The culture and environmental permitting, we're pretty close to getting that wrapped up. And then we're developing a scope and fee for our involvement during the construction phase of that project. It's going to likely be a combination of city resources to provide daily inspection, and then JEB providing engineering support, answering questions and reviewing things as needed. We're hoping to advertise for bids, hopefully in May, if we can get through all of the hurdles. So that'll be something that we'll get movement on this year, hopefully. One couple of things that the city is working on right now we are waiting to get approval from the EPA community grants. So that's a $3.5 million grant coming through EPA. We're just making sure that the application has been sent in, and they've sent some questions that we've responded to. We're kind of waiting. That's kind of the bottleneck right now, is waiting for that funding to come through. But that's another $3.5 million of grant on top of the $10 million of grant from ecology. The other thing that the city is working on is continuing discussions with Walla Walla about a user rate evaluation with the FCS group. Taking a look at if in this interim agreement, College Place pumps treated effluent to Walla Walla, how does that user agreement look? What kind of rates might be associated with that? So that's something else that's in the works right now as well. Next slide, please. So the lift station number 5 project, as I mentioned, we're currently working on the design of that, and it's funded by Public Works Trust Fund loan. The construction of that project will be funded by the same ecology agreement that we just talked about. Recently, we did amend our scope of work to add storm improvements and repaving Southwest First Avenue, including sidewalks. The next slide, if you could switch to it, please. I know this is probably a little bit difficult to read at this resolution, but this is an aerial image site plan of the lift station number 5 project. And so on the left side of the screen, that call out is pointing to where the existing sewer lift station is. It protrudes up above the sidewalk and is really difficult for operations and maintenance. The city has worked on buying a new piece of property to locate the new lift station towards on the south side of Southwest First Street. And so that entire roadway shown there, pretty much, I'd say maybe half or 2/3 of Southwest First Street will be running pipes through. And so we'll also be repaving that road, adding sidewalks to the road, and adding some storm drainage improvements along the road as well. We're planning to advertise for bids sometime this summer, 2023. And associated with the ecology funding, we do have to do some environmental permitting and public notice as well. So at an upcoming council meeting here in the next month or two, you'll likely see some more information about this as we conduct some public notice about the project. Okay, next slide on the 2023 CIPP. Again, this was another part of the ecology funding package. It's the mix of grant and loan. One thing that's noteworthy in terms of this project, as well as the lift station number 5 project, we did not have to apply to ecology for this funding. This is a new pilot project program that ecology started for smaller communities to make it easier to get projects funded. And so they simply just called and said, do you have any projects in the works that we could add to the funding application that you already submitted for the treatment plant? And because the city went ahead and did the general sewer plan and had a planned out set of projects with costs associated with it, we said, yeah, we have 10 years worth of projects that we could add to the list. They said, great, we'll put it on there. So it turned out to be really great timing, and it shows the importance of doing these planning documents where you're planning out improvements for the next several years, because you never know when there will be a big pot of money to spend on things. So I think this was a great thing. So essentially all of the trenchless pipe rehabilitation we identified in that general sewer plan, it adds up to about 15,000 feet of piping will be rehabilitated as part of this project. And a lot of these are pipes that the operations and maintenance staff identified as being problem areas. They're located near creeks and are areas where we think a lot of groundwater is intruding into the collection system. So the hope is that by rehabilitating these projects, it's less of a burden on the operations and maintenance staff, and will reduce the flows to the treatment plant because there will be less groundwater leaking into the system. So this should be a great project. Again, associated with the funding, we do have to do some public notice. So we'll be doing that for both this and the lift station 5 project at the same time, coming up soon. The next slide is a graphic showing all of the areas in town that we will be rehabilitating with secured in place piping. You can see they're scattered really all throughout the community. Okay, next slide, reservoir number 4. So that's a project that JV is currently working on design for. It was funded through the 30% design phase by a Public Works Trust Fund loan. We've completed the 30% design phase, but there was budget available, so we went ahead and continued into the 60% design as well. We had applied to the Department of Health for funding for the remainder of design and construction, but that application was unsuccessful. So we'll need to apply again in this fall of 2023. We met this morning talking about some ideas of some other funding sources that we can apply for to get us through the 100% design stage. So we'll be working on that, and we'll keep progress moving forward on the design of the project. One thing that's noteworthy on this is the part of this project is a transmission main all along with John Muir. And so the timing of that, it's really important that is tied with the Majunga Road construction project. And Robert has been hosting monthly workshop meetings with the consultant working on the Majunga Road design. And so we're coordinating that pretty carefully. Next slide, please. So this is one of the traffic and transportation issues that was brought to our attention. The city had been receiving calls and complaints about the intersection and concerns about the operations and safety at the intersection. So our traffic engineers at JEB reviewed the existing intersection control, site restrictions, crash data, and traffic counts that were available. And based upon our review of that, we didn't think that anything warranted any changes at this intersection, but because it is so close to schools and pedestrians, we wanted to make sure that something was done there. So we recommended adding all-way stop control and adding solar flashing LEDs on Whitman to increase pedestrian crossing safety. And there's a photo there of what that recommendation would look like. And I believe later on, one of the action items talks about this item a little bit more. Then finally, Southwest Garrison Village Way. This is an existing traffic circle. It's privately owned. There aren't any other entry control signs except for the Southwest Garrison Way leg, where you can see in the photo on the top of that screen is there's a stop sign there. The traffic circle has little traffic, but the westbound vehicles are stopped entering the traffic signal where that stop sign is shown. The standards recommend yield conditions where a full stop isn't necessary at all times. And so our recommendation is to replace that stop sign with just a yield sign instead. And this is another item I believe is an action item a little bit later on to talk about a little bit more. So that is my summary of the things that we have going on. Any questions or comments?
Anyone? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Alex.
Good.
Stick around and we may have more questions as we get into the action items, which is next. And it looks like Mike's got all of them. We'll start with the first one, fiscal year 2023 Community Grants Program Ad Hoc Application Review Committee. Mike?
Yeah, so every year city council allocates some funding that can be distributed to community organizations via a competitive process wrapped up at the end of January. We end up receiving 8 applications. So basically they have to be reviewed. The way it's reviewed is we typically have a representative apiece from the advisory boards, grade them, and then the aggregate of the grades, the representatives meet for discussion, rank them. That ranking gets forwarded to the city council, and then they make the determination to follow through with the decision of the ad hoc committee. So as such, typically we need a representative from this body to agree to help rank the applications. I will say, because of the makeup of this body and the applications received, really it would need to be determined between Mr. Cross and Mr. Tussman, which one of you two would want to grade them, just because Commission Member Williams is on the council, and then Commissioner Riggle is on the board of agency that has submitted a grant for this.
Well, Mr. Kress, what's your pleasure?
I'm sorry, I got distracted momentarily. So my pleasure is to, or lack of pleasure is to describe for you my my distraction. I hope this doesn't go into the minutes.
Well, that being said, I'll be happy.
Okay.
I don't know if I motion to do it myself, but
Yeah, I mean, I could work if someone seconds.
all right, I move that I appoint myself to the ad hoc Community Grant Review Committee.
I'll second that.
I guess all in favor, say aye,
Aye.
or raise their hand.
Aye.
Did Member Williams vote? Commission Member Williams? Commission Member Williams? You're muted.
I'm sorry, Zoom had disappeared off my screen and I was like, where is it? I need to. see what- So, sorry, I guess I pushed the wrong button, but yes, aye.
Thank you. Thank you. So moved.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments on that? If not, we'll move on. Moving to the Garrison Village traffic circle signage.
Do you want me to take this, Mike, or do you want to do it?
I can just cover this one, so, you heard what the city engineer Pizzari presented, I will just mention that the roadway of Garrison Village Way from Myra up to the traffic circle is city owned, that's why, it's in front of you, that part of the egress is city owned, but then the rest goes private. And all of these traffic considerations, when they come before you, this isn't just us randomly deciding them. It's typically because we've had a series of complaints turned in to the city and then we have to do something about it. So that, and ever since the DCO road situation of a couple years ago, we make sure we have a fairly well thought out engineer report with it. So that tends to nip the debate a bit about whether it's feelings or if it's engineering based. So that's what's in front of you.
I live just down the street from that traffic circle, and the proposal is one I wholeheartedly support.
I have wondered about that for a really long time, so I was interested to find out that, oh, that's our one areas. So the rule is always to use the least restrictive thing that will work, and so I support this as well.
And are we talking about yield signs on both the east and the west intersection of Garrison Village Way and that traffic circle? Because that's what I think is needed.
I can chime in on that. The only leg that's city owned is coming off of Myra. So it's city right away from Myra to the circle, and I believe the road around the circle is actually city road as well, but all the legs, the other legs that come off of it are private and the signage on them is private. And
Perfect.
so
Yeah, it occurs to me the homeowners association has already put a sign on their property on the west side of that.
I believe you're correct. I believe they have one of their smaller, not typical road signs on that side. I also believe there is one private leg of that. I can't remember the road now. Wimbrel, that does have a stop sign, but it is a homeowners association stop sign as well. And so I think we would, assuming this passed, we would encourage the homeowners association to follow suit.
The only question I had regarding this is that lot, I guess that would be to the north, coming off of Myra, before you get to the traffic circle, any future development, I mean, with that, we just have to explore that at a later date.
Yeah, I think you're talking about how when that tied into.
Yeah.
Depending on what development went in there, that would be considered at that time.
Okay.
As an officer of the homeowners association, I will pass on the recommendation regarding Wimble Loop.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we seek a motion here on this? If not, do we have a motion?
I will move to approve the installation of a yield sign, replacing stop sign.
I second.
We have a second. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that was everybody that was in favor. In favor. Yeah. All right, motion is carried. Moving on to the pavement rating study.
Okay, thank you. So this body as well as city council authorized the pavement management inventory be conducted late last year. It has since been conducted. There is a report that essentially goes over the condition of the pavement. I mean, it's no surprise really. The boilerplate clips notes of this is that the roads that are arterials that are federally classified that we're able to get grant funding for are in spectacular condition, and all the local roads that we can't get any grant funding for are deteriorating very quickly, pretty much. And it demonstrates that pretty much at the current funding level, that's going to continue to grow that problem and the localized streets. This is the first time ever a professional company or person that actually does this sort of thing ever did this in the city. There is no earlier one. This is the start of it. Commissioner Williams did extend some things she knows in there, so I'll address a little bit that I'm able to. There was one typo in the summary where there's a deviation of 10 million versus 12.5. Throughout the report, it's the 10, the 12 one. I think they must have took from somewhere else. So there's that. And then also how they have the roadways broken down. So what's interesting to know is within the pavement management software that they use, it basically breaks everything out by either residential or collector. It doesn't have an option for arterial, and I want to get this out in front of you early enough, so I've not had the time to fix it. But the important thing to know is that within our own GIS system, we can fairly easily get the arterial designation attached out, and we plan on moving that data into the Tyler software that will be implemented citywide. They'll deal with utilities, finance, and community development. I think this is very important report, but we definitely need buy-in and folks of basically recognizing that this is the baseline for street conditions. And I will say this much: years ago, understanding where the local streets were headed, we did all the homework about roughly 6 years ago is when I first started about creating a transportation benefit district code. And then because of other needs and capacity issues, anything past the creation of that was like mothballed at the time. In fact, we actually file audit reports on it, even though it doesn't collect any money, but it's a legal organization. I will say what this report shows though, is that is needed if we want to rescue the local roads before it gets to the point of having to do reconstructions all over the place. So I will mention that likely in the future, there will be further discussion about whether or not to put that as a question of the people, because you have two options to do funding for benefit districts. You have the car tabs, but that tends to be a little more regressive, and it's just on the folks that have stuff registered in town, or the sales tax. And given the fact we have the big boxes in the valley, that would be an opportunity for our neighbors in Walla Walla and Milton, Freewater, and everywhere else shopping here to help pay for the roads, because that would be 0.1% on your sales tax. And I would also mention that Walla Walla has had that for a number of years, as has Waitsburg and then the Tri-Cities as well. But the action today is just to recommending this report to council, because I think before we get to that point, it's important to establish this as the baseline. Questions?
Thank you, Mike. I thought this was a really well-written report. But one thing that, if it was in there, I missed it, was what would we approximately need to spend if we could wave a magic wand and we were up to speed? What would we need to spend to stay there? Because it seems like there might be a better potential to get money to get up to speed if we showed that we had already put in place enough funding to stay there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. As I responded in email, I could have swore that was somewhere in the report, but I have not had the chance in the last hour and a half to take a gander. I remember reading something to that effect though, but that's a big report.
Yeah, and I did not, read every word, I must admit. So I think that might be something that would be nice to, before it goes to council, pull into the executive summary.
Okay, I can tell them that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, discussion regarding this? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I move acceptance or recommendation of this report to the city council. I'm not sure what the exact form of words is.
Yeah, motion to recommend city council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand or digital hand or
I
Aye.
I need to hear the votes. I didn't hear them in the press.
Yes, I vote yes.
unanimous?
Yeah.
And me too?
Yeah.
All right. That is carried. Back to Mike for transfer of Pocket iNet franchise to Lightspeed Internet LLC.
Yep. So anything having to do our telecommunications franchises also falls under the purview of this commission. And if a franchise for internet or phone or the like gets transferred from one organization to another, there has to be approval from the governing body. So city council would be through this as the advisory body. So we received communications from Pocket iNet. It appears they're being bought out by Lightspeed Networks. They're out of Portland, Oregon, and they're expanding pretty much all over Eastern Washington. I know they were doing similar activities out in Prosser and some of the Tri-Cities. So in essence, they're seeking transfer of this franchise from Pocket iNet to Lightspeed. In talks with Mr. Brandenburg, it appears there's going to be a fairly significant capital infusion where they plan on addressing the donut holes that have played College Place, because I will say historically with Pocket iNet service, for the newer neighborhoods, they provided service, but like the older parts of town, they did not. So I think this will end up with a fairly even opportunity to subscribe to them, which will be good. I will note though that, and we really can't control this element of it, but I just want this body to be aware of it. I think some of what's happening in the broadband internet paradigm is gonna stretch out our public works inspection crews pretty good, because it sounds like they're gonna be installing additional fiber and such, and then Ziply is also planning to go all across town and do it. So I do think we may be having like both of them going into areas around the same time that could be very interesting. But the way the state franchise laws are, you're very limited on what you can do about that. But nonetheless, this is just seeking approval of moving it from Pocket INET to that light speed, and basically Pocket INET will continue to exist in name and operations, but it will be a division of Lightspeed. Questions?
I don't know how much say we have in whether or not we let them do the transfer or not, but have you tapped into your, city manager network to find out, are they generally reputable?
Yeah. I will say from talking with folks who've dealt with them, I actually think we're gonna have a lot less problems with installations from them than we will with another carrier that I mentioned earlier. So I'll just couch it there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I move that we recommend to City Council the approval of transfer of Pocket INET franchise to Lightspeed Internet.
I'll second that.
John? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, wave your hand, show your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And I'm in favor too.
Okay.
And I believe that was all in favor, correct? All right. And we are moving on now to the draft tax increment financing study for Stone Creek downtown. Mike?
Okay, thank you. So tax increment financing, we've been lobbying to even get this in the state for several years, and for a long time we didn't have it. Now we do. In every other state except Washington, it was common practice to create tax increment financing as a way to fund infrastructure for future areas of development for residential and commercial. And the premise behind tax increment financing is you get a third-party consultant to do an analysis that has various scenarios of your ideal development, then you pare it down more conservatively, and it's over a 25-year period what you think the additional property tax pull could be off of the new development. And then there's various ways that you can fund it by creating this tax increment financing district. One such way is that you bond against it and do it all at once. Another way is doing pay as you go. And then, but regardless with the pay as you go pool, how you get the funding is that right now, let's say the TIF district gets formed, you have a baseline of what the property taxes are being pulled in the zone. In that baseline, all the agencies in that district continue, they will always continue to get what they're making today. However, if like this district gets formed, let's say, for instance, like the school, all money at the schools get pulled out, they'll keep getting it even beyond what they make today. However, like the county and the port and the library, let's say, I'm just making up numbers, just for ease of use, but let's say they're pulling $1 today. And then let's say 10 years from now, it's like $1.20. Well, in 10 years until that payment of the infrastructure would be paid off, they'd continue to get that dollar, but then the 20 cents would be in that TIF fund and it would go to pay for the infrastructure. So the areas we're looking at creating a TIF district for, if you could click on the GIS document. Each city can make up to 2 tax increment financing districts. We're only proposing to make 1, and then the other one will hold essentially just in case something happens in the future. Is this one, it would span the downtown and the Stone Creek area. So pretty much all of the mixed use property along College Avenue from Whitman up to C Street. And then College Avenue 4th all the way down to the highway. And then the McKiernan Christensen properties, which is the farmland that's going to be developed inside the city to the southwest of Majanier and College Avenue. Now the projects that we're looking at funding with this, we've essentially have pared them down where the TIF only pay for a portion of it, and we go for other grants and things to make up the difference. And the reason why is because we need to be very careful of the debt, because this sort of debt counts against like the amount of debt the council can vote on. So that's what, and we want to leave room in case emergencies arise or what have you. So we want to be very conservative about it. So what we're proposing with this would be that the TIF would pay for about $4 million of Majanier Road, which that's known it needs to be upgraded. And engineering is currently underway on that. Then we have portions of it going for the east-west road across the commercial portion of the development. So Mike McKiernan's property, as well as some intersection improvements, because when the new east-west road is built, it's going to match up with the entrance way for College Place High School. So you're going to need to have either a traffic circle or a stoplight. And then for the downtown portions, one of the things that's really stymied development along College Avenue has been the lack of parking. We, over the years, I can't tell you how many folks have wanted to build mixed use structures, but the problem is, unlike other downtown areas, we don't have perfectly square properties. We have very long, narrow properties and large blocks. And what's happened is that the way the code currently is, and really sense of it, I mean, we're going to be more of a pedestrian oriented community, but you still have the auto. You need to provide parking, and a lot of those properties just cannot accommodate it in the current format, and the roads off of College Avenue are narrow enough where you can't depend on street parking. In fact, with the apartment complex that's going to be going into the 8th and College, the only way we got that to work is we actually negotiated interlocal with them to, in essence, rent some parking spots here at the municipal campus, but we don't have enough spots here to do that for the entire College Avenue corridor. So the TIF will also pay to develop 2 parking lots, and how that can be accomplished is that several of these large blocks have properties in the middle with easements going to the street where there's nothing in the middle of them, and that would make sense. They have parking lots. So there's a proposal for essentially 2 parking lots. And then if we did that, we could waive the parking requirement for new development on College Avenue, which I think that'd be a game changer. So the way this tax increment financing process is working is merely today we're going to you for a recommendation that City Council forward this to the State Treasurer's Office. And that's mainly because per the way the code is, you do the report, you certify you in general agree with the report, and you send it to the treasurer. State treasurer reviews it, and they'll provide comments back as to whether or not you should do it or not, and other items that they may have. It's essential to give it to them because per the state, this new state law, they have up to 90 days to review it. And the other problem is that there's also a June 1st deadline to turn in these TIF reports. So if we miss it, what that then happens is we have to wait all the way till June 2024 to turn it in. And why that's very important is because City of Walla Walla is in the planning stages of doing one of these as well. And we want to be timely so we can get commercial and residential going and also potentially not lose tenants on the commercial side of the thing. So we're really trying to push hard to get this turned in. So Economic Development Commission, they recommended this go forward. This went to City Council workshop on Tuesday. This is going to you all now, and then if you all approve it, this is going to go to council to formally send to the treasurer on Tuesday. So that's a mouthful. Does anyone have questions on this? I will mention for those that do work in Oregon, the tax increment financing exists down there. It's just called urban renewal. So like with it down in Pendleton and Hermiston, they talk about a lot of sort of same thing, but it's called urban renewal.
Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
This is John. I move to recommend that the council forward to the state of Washington the proposed economic development TIF District 1.
Second, Councilmember Williams. Or Commissioner Williams, I don't know.
All in favor, raise your hand, digital hand, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. It sounded like it was unanimous. All right, and it was. All right, moving on to Whitman Academy intersection all-way stop control. Mike?
Okay, this is just following through with city engineer Pizzari with he presented. We've gotten a lot of folks contacting the city over the last 2 years about the inherent danger over there, and this is trying to correct that. And basically, it would be a similar treatment to what you've seen in past years with what was done out at 12th and Large and Whitman and Large with the flashy stop signs and such. So I will note the really 3 of the legs of this intersection are bike routes too. So there's a lot of the multimodal traffic moving through there, and that's the only access to everyone that lives out at Homestead too. So.
Question, discussion? Hearing none. Well, I move that the city council accept the city engineer's memo recommending to install the stop sign on Whitman at Academy for both westbound and eastbound traffic, including LED units on the borders of the new stop signs.
I second.
All in favor, say aye or show, raise hands, digital hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so moved. And that now brings us to reports. We go back to Mike for the broadband action team.
Okay, so this is just to bring everyone up to speed on this. So federal government has this BEAD legislation in which it'll pay for fiber to be installed throughout like counties and communities. But the way it works, at least in this state, and the state broadband office decided this is county by county. There has to be these like broadband action teams created to essentially map out and develop a plan of where all of this fiber will go. Part of why in this county specifically, it's a little discombobulated is because originally the Port of Walla Walla did a study about where broadband would go out in the eastern reaches of the western reaches of the county. So Burbank, Wallula, Touchy, Loudoun, areas like that, but it didn't address the incorporated areas like College Place, Walla Walla, and Wadesburg, because at the time they were chasing the rural money. This money is for everything. So community councils actually taken the lead on this, and they'll be working with the WSU extension. But over the coming 4 months, a plan has to be put together about where all of these gaps are, and they're dealing with it in 2 tranches. One tranche is areas that have no internet. So in that case, it's under 25 Mbps for speed, and then areas that are underserved, which is under 300. And College Place has several of those in the older reaches of town, basically right behind here along Birch Street and areas like that. So they're having an initial meeting to figure out who's going to be on this and what this looks like this Friday at 8:30 in the morning out of the airport conference room. And then you'll be seeing a lot of advertisements about them meeting and developing this plan. So it should be city officials, planning officials, anyone interested in internet pretty much, and then the police and fire, because we're a little bit behind the curveball on doing this plan, but the entire plan for a whole county has to be put together and adopted in 4 months. And then the state is going to aggregate all of these plans and then turn in a gigantic application to the feds, and then the money will come down, because the totality of the money coming down through this all across the country is about $42 billion, and it's a one-time thing. So like if this area missed it, you probably will never see it again. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of this, because this is a pretty monumental thing, because you basically get one bite of the apple for the countywide BAT plan, and then they'll give out the money. And then if you miss it, you miss it. So there's a lot of work to do over the next 4 months. Questions?
Not a question, more of a comment, just backing up what everything you said, Mike. I've dove into this quite a bit extensively over the last couple of months, and with what I do as a job. And you're absolutely right. It's one bite of the apple. There's a lot of money involved. I hate to say it, there is also, some politics involved too, as far as, I don't know a state legislator or somebody on the federal level who is not saying for communities to get on board with this. So I commend the city. Mike, please express, the work that the Broadband Action Team has done and will have to do to move forward. There's a lot there. And I hope everybody took a chance to look at what Mike prepared for this commission, but if not, educate yourself, because it's not just about connecting somebody so that, mom and pop kettle can Google or play games or, have Netflix. It's much, much deeper than that. And it has connotations to, law enforcement and government and response and all of that. That's where we're at right now, being a connected community and a connected world. And there's just a lot there. And yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Anyone else? Hearing none, moving on. Fiscal year 2023 legislative session bills to monitor which tie to legislative agenda.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure this body was aware of many that are moving around this year. Is especially a crazy year because for the past several, they only ran a couple of bills here and there because they weren't really back in Olympia. Now they are. So that means pretty much anyone who has an idea is running a bill. So there's about 750 of them floating around right now. Some of the bigger ones is, and I listed some interesting ones as far as ones that directly tie to this body. One is the combination of House Bill 1110 and 5190, and at least in its current form, we're opposing it, but we're suggesting language to it. So it's to address the missing middle housing, but the problem is they're taking a one size fits all approach instead of looking at the nuance of stuff. And with this bill, as it currently stands, they want to eliminate single family zoning, so it would actually upzone all the single family neighborhoods to where you could do apartments. So it would make single family illegal. And then the other thing that's very troublesome, and this goes back to how we have weird parcels here in town. As it currently stands in that law that's proposed, they're saying that no matter the size of the lot or the shape of it, you could basically fit up to 6 separate accessory dwelling units on every property. Which, if you've seen a lot of the lots in town, I would love to. I shouldn't say love, because I probably most here wouldn't, but what that would end up looking like, because with the long narrow lots, I don't get how you could even do that. And then the other thing is that it would basically ban parking requirements too, where you couldn't do any parking requirements. So how much density and then no way to figure out parking, that's pretty much a nightmare. So I mean, we think that there's good intent behind this, but they're trying to take what I think is more of like urban ways of dealing with it and just trying to go all over the place with it. So we think there needs to be a little more nuance to that. The other big ones is Senate Bill 5303. That one we're supporting because what they've done for several years is anytime the state gets into a financial pinch, they should be sending the repayments of money from the Public Works Board, the Public Works Revolving Fund Loan Program. It should be going right in there. And for the last several budgetary years, they've been swiping that money and plug holes in the general fund. So this bill, if it passes, would basically put by law where it has like its own standalone fund that no one can touch, which would be amazing. Then other ones that are big is House Bill 1125 and Senate Bill 5162, and this is the transportation budget. And everyone will love this because it's basically changing what everyone voted on, except they're trying to do it administratively. And so when everyone voted on the Connecting Washington transportation budget back in 2015, there was the money to do phase 7 of Highway 12. And then in there was also money as soon as phase 7 wrapped up to at least do the design and the right-of-way acquisition for phase 8 from 9 Mile Hill over to the paper plant. So we just had a meeting, the Highway 12 Coalition with Todd Trepanier from the State Department of Transportation. And because the port and everyone was looking at putting together a federal grant through RAISE or other sources, because there's a lot of federal money and we're like that'll be their turn to pay to finally finish the thing and be done. And the thought was, well, we can use the money that is the engineering and the right-of-way stuff is the local match, and then we get the federal money and bingo. Well, apparently, the State Department of Transportation, because if you remember, they passed a partisan bill during COVID that essentially prioritized a bunch of multimodal stuff. And they're saying, well, we have the two dual things and we're putting more priority on the multimodal stuff, and no investments in that is anywhere in this part of the state. And what it's boiled down to is instead of allowing this to go at engineering this year, they're saying the governor's office is telling them to pung it out 10 years. So the big problem with that as it stands is the federal money that's getting issued for transportation is really right now as it's programmed only over the next couple of years. So if that stands, we're basically gonna miss the boat to get federal money, and I think that seriously puts in jeopardy phase 8 ever happening. So, Spokane is having some success fight, the state because they're in the same boat right now too. And as part of Connect in Washington, they have money where, this year and next year, they were gonna wrap up building the north-south freeway for 395, which people have been talking about for the last 50 years. And apparently they were the administrative stay on that for 10 years too. Except they have a little more fight up there just because they're being very loud about it. And now they're starting to talk about putting that back in play. I would suggest everyone in the room gets super loud toward the state legislature and the governor's office and the Department of Transportation to follow the intent of Connect in Washington, get that in there for this year. Because otherwise we can't count that as a local match and we aren't going to get that federal grant, because the feds have already said, why would we give you that? The state's not even on board. And it's very troublesome because I would say the Department of Transportation, they just are of the rhetoric that, well, hey, any new capacity issues or anything new is bad and it's all about preservation, which to a point I get, but on the other hand, this region has over the last like 20 years has been phasing this thing together. So that would be a bit ridiculous to have spent all the years slowly cobbling it together. And then you're at the last phase and then just to give up. And I think that has very chilling ramifications for not only transportation, but freight and economic development in this valley too. So I'm deeply concerned about that one. So definitely work on that. And then two other things to watch as well is Senate Bill 5037. So they're trying to codify that the state can't ban natural gas because there's a move right now. And it'd be one thing if it was going to be a phased approach, but as the discussion has currently been had in the state, they're trying to administratively, while the bill, run it through the Building Code Council to just ban natural gas in any new construction. But then when also things go out and exist in construction. And I've talked with Columbia REA, they openly admit they don't have capacity to go to all of that. So if you don't have capacity in the existing grid, what's everyone supposed to do? So that one's not really well thought out. So that Senate Bill 5037 would essentially try to codify that Building Code Council can't be doing that sort of stuff administratively. And then the other one, which is a big deal, is House Bill 1402. And that deals with urban growth areas. And this actually circuit breaks like the issue we had with the county a couple of years ago. And what this bill says is that if a piece of property is in an urban growth area or in the city limits and hasn't been developed in 20 years, that doesn't count against your allocation for future growth. And then you can grow more. And as we all know, there's several properties in town where they have development potential, but the folks that own them are just doing their thing. And right now it's counting against us. So if that bill moves forward and he actually gets passed as law, we'll actually be able to like grow and do stuff like that. So that's a big deal. So that one's supported as well, but that's just the update of things. I would say that urban growth bill and then the transportation capital bill is the biggest one because those two I would say are very intertwined with the future of the community. Questions?
Well, hearing none. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Lots to watch four out of Olympia as they're still in session over there.
Yep.
While closing things up, looks like our next meeting is scheduled for May 11th, 2023. I don't know if they'll be in this room or at City Hall as they're working over there. And before we adjourn, any other items that this commission needs to know about?
No.
All right, if not, I guess we'll adjourn this meeting. Everybody have a good evening and we'll see you back here on May 11th.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
We need a, we do.
Motion and then
Oh,
a
do we-
second.
we need a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry.
I move we adjourn.
And a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
I thought we didn't do that anymore, Sherry. Or is that just the council?
I guess we do.
Yeah.
Okay,
That said, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. See you later.
Highway 12. Yeah, Highway 12. Then we met with their regional director. I was surprised by